Let's have a look at some video cameras. Got these JVCs here. Thought we'd just try them out since they've been sitting around for a long time, not tried out, and remember the good old days of blurry, weird looking pictures. This has a strange handle thing that folds out and then goes around so that you can grip it, and then it sits on your shoulder. There's a keypad. So you can type in titles on it, which is quite exciting. And you can choose the color with the switch up here. And there's a stopwatch option. When it was on, I heard this high-pitched noise, and it's the viewfinder. There's something wrong with the viewfinder, so that's a shame. It just makes a high-pitched noise, and the picture in it is really sad. I can hear a high-pitched noise coming out. That it was working originally. Oh yeah, it seems to jump between working and not working. Interesting, this viewfinder has got a switch on it which allows you to mirror the image, or flip the image so you can have it on that side if you want, because it says left and right there. And when it was working, I could see that was flipping the image. Color banding. Anyway, that's that camera. The cable that's used for that is the same as the one on this camera, or for this camera. Can wait for it to warm up. There you go. I don't know where the white balance set. Presumably that's one of these things. Oh yeah, probably that. Or was that iris? Oh, maybe that's the white balance set. Equally... oh no, that's a gain thing. And there's a filter. Some sort of iris thing. Oh, there's the white balance thing. I thought that was another zoom, but yeah, there's a power zoom up here. The white balance. Set that. And that kind of blurry sort of picture that we're used to, or we were used to in the 80s. Great. And I found this one, which its cord has gone all crusty. I'm wondering if that's why there was such a stink in the storage bin that a lot of these were in. It's a clear storage bin, and it's gone cloudy on the inside, so I think there's outgassing from probably these cables, because a lot of them have gone all sticky and gross, which is quite disappointing. Somehow the viewfinder attaches, yeah, and then plugs in there. I think that rotates, yeah, so you can have a rotated one of those things. Sharp camera, QC-78. Let's plug that in and see if it does anything. Yeah, it does that. Oh look, you can see the titling. You can hear a noise coming from it. Oh, look at that, you cycle through everything. Oh, that's awesome. Got a power zoom, but yeah, the picture doesn't work. The viewfinder on it is functioning. Seems like autofocus is trying to, but there's no picture there. Yeah, well, that's really on its last legs. The cord has gone gross and hard. Finally, for looking at old cameras today, we got this one, which is the subject of this video. It's the Mitsubishi. It lost its grip by the look of it. CC-50. It's got a possibly rewirable plug on it, because it's not molded on, it's got screws holding the cord clamp in place. I don't think this works. Oh, it made it's warmed up look, but either the iris is stuck shut on it, or yeah, I don't know. The viewfinder's lit up, but there's nothing going on in there. It's got a lens filter on it. I just noticed 52mm filter. Filter. So we're going to take this apart, see what's going on inside it. Alright. Interesting telescopic microphone, and the foam thing on it is still somewhat intact, which is unusual because normally those have disintegrated. And the usual trick, hide some screws under the cover of the shoe. Now this viewfinder thing doesn't flip up like they normally do. It's got this, okay, it does that. Yeah, this ring. It's already coming apart. Yeah, normally they flip up, but that's got a ring screw-on clamp thing. Yeah, and the chassis shows up on the bottom. It's not covered over, which gives a nice screwing onness. They must have had a whole thing because there's 2 tripods, screws, and various locating holes. There's also the polarity selection for the pause trigger. Some VCRs take high rather than low, or low rather than high to start the recording, so you can choose that there. Oh, look at that. That opens up quite nicely, doesn't it? A lot easier to get into than some of the other cameras we've seen. Look at that little viewfinder assembly there with the CRT with that anode cap on it. So we should be a little bit careful with that because we've just had that powered up. It will be holding a little bit of charge. Looks like that's the connection to the viewfinder. So these boards fold out, there's hinges at the bottom. You can see some ribbon cable through there, which is interesting. Seems to be very well designed. Nicely laid out components. Look at that, and it folds out. And I just noticed that there's 4 screws on the front there, so probably the whole lens assembly will come off. I want to see how the zoom motor works since there's so little room in there. I guess because that narrows down, so there will be space in there for zoom motor mechanism. Another little board in there with some sort of power supply looking stuff on it. It was a Sachikon tube, Hitachi, made in Japan. Okay, let's unplug the lens part. Yeah, that doesn't really fit through very easily. Let's see if you undo these front screws that the lens will come off. It seems a shame to destroy this nice camera, but it doesn't work. Maybe we can find out. Do you think that it is all working but the iris is stuck shut? Is that possible? Because it did that of green across the screen when it warmed up, which sort of suggests that the tube is alive and that signal is coming off of it. We should undo this as well. Okay. It's a whole viewfinder assembly on the top. I was interested to see if this is using the same CRT tube as other ones, same as what we found in other cameras. Okay, that shielding plate. So the cord that goes to the microphone is wrapped around that clip on the CRT. Weird. I did have a quick look for a service manual for this and didn't see anything. Maybe it's a remanufacture of another brand or model, or rebadged version. Might be a whole self-contained viewfinder. It's got quite a few cores, but it looks like most of them just go to this little LED board thing. See, there's a bunch of things that light up, and I think there was arrows next to those letters as well. So quite a number of LEDs. That is probably a common there. Let's see that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 LEDs, I guess, and a return from an 8-way connector. That only leaves the ground, a power supply, and a video signal. So it must be fully self-contained unit. That's nice. The type of tube there, it's 30CB4A, which I think that is disappointing because I was hoping it would be the same as that larger one that we saw in other cameras. This here, which I think is a 40 GB4, but it's not, it's the smaller type. It's a little bit disappointing because I wanted to collect more of these for a project. Anyway, this front part was coming off. Oh no, that's the whole thing, it's not just the... Okay, well let's just do it. We'll unplug these. Now there's that. Whatever that does. Are these labelled in any way? We just have to use our luck to join them back if we join it back. And now there's all the bits that plug onto the tube. Like deflection. Okay, then we've got to take the plug off the back of the tube. And then there's a ground wire that has to be unsoldered. And then the wire off the pickup. There you go, look at that. Got it out. Whole camera assembly. Oh, okay, so now there's some tiny screws around there, which looks like this cover will come off. But we probably have to take that off. So it looks like that slides down. Let's see. Will that fit? Yes. Ah, look at that. That little thingy that pushes the record start stop. That pushes a little switch that's there. Oh. Yeah, maybe it's ruined now. It doesn't. I was thinking that cover would just come off, but no, it pulls out that. The VTR trigger. And I guess it would be interesting now to power that up and see, does it respond to light? Or also see, does the iris open? So if that's all the problem is, then just giving it a good poking would sort that out. There's a capacitor gone bad. Look at the stuff that's in here. So that will be the zoom motor, which will be a DC motor with a little gearbox on it. Then that's the servo thing for the iris. And then there's that lever, which manual lens, so it disengages the motor. And auto, I guess. And there's quite a deep variable resistor there for this white balance control, so you can adjust it with a detent, and you can also push it to indicate, which has got a really nice feel to that. It's a nice switch. And then there's that slide switch, which you can hear it adjusts some filters inside the lens. Okay, let's see if we can pull this stuff out, because I want to give the iris a poking, but I don't want to destroy it. I think we can slide that cover off, can we? Don't know. The first number 2 size screw there, holding some sort of cable tie thing. Yeah, now the problem is, yeah, so what we're looking for is there's massive corrosion on a solder joint there, and on the other side of that is a capacitor, and you can see there's corrosion on the tracks of the board, and also some juice. So that's a little bit concerning. That looks like it's for the power zoom motor, which still worked. So yeah, I guess that capacitor's given up. There's a couple of screws on that bracket that holds that motor in. Different length screws, that's awesome. There's one on the other side down there that can't be seen very easily. Okay. Oops. Oh, that was just the bung off of the cable. But, yeah, there's the other screw. So there's a mechanism there that little lever switch thing there on the side that pushes this piece along, and that slides the gear up so the motor is no longer engaged. That's cunning. Okay, I've had a look around in this thing, and the capacitor there is not related to the motor. Well, not directly. It seems to be just out on a limb with some wires. Probably does end up at the motor eventually, but it's not directly connected to it. It looks like we can get this cover thing off, and that the iris part will come with it by undoing several screws around here. One which we already undid, which was one that was through that larger hole there. And one more down the back here. Now what's going to happen? Oh yep, it's coming off. Oh, look at that, it comes off cleanly. Okay, now we can see that when you use the switch here, puts a color filter in front, and there's the iris, which seems to work cleanly and nicely. Just wondering if we should put this thing back together so we can turn it on and see if that does open up. Can this just go around anyway? I don't think so. Should we put it back together and try and turn it on? We don't need this part. We just need to plug that in. Presumably that went there, did it? That was down there. Just so that that doesn't flap around and short out on something. Flap around in the breeze. So it's those wires there go to the iris thing. See, that's the deflection coils. And that's the pickup. That there, I'm not sure, is that from some sort of sensor? Or does it have that light, bias light maybe? Not sure, wouldn't that be around the back here? We saw that on one of the other cameras. Not sure, that's probably all it needs to go into this box, which is where the target comes off the tube, and there's a little preamp thing there. And it says 9 volts, must be coming from that red wire. Okay, let's get this in. That must be the audio circuit there, self-contained. And then yeah, that directly goes onto the camera cable. Camera cable comes into there. Some signal routing stuff. Viewfinder connector. What is that? Oh, that might be the iris control. Maybe from that? Control there, because it does go to there, if I remember right. Or is that bringing power across? So it says there's a power switch there. Who knows? It's got surface mount stuff on it. High voltage. It's got those SIL style single inline ICs rather than dip style. And more over here. There's video on that. Must be where the video processing happens. Yeah, was that where that thing hooked up? Yeah. So this side here is all the deflection stuff. Deflection and power supplies for the tube. Okay, let's stick this back in. See if we can get it to juice up. Okay, that went on there. It's got a little loop on it, so I wonder if it knows that you've unplugged it and then protects in some way. Could turn off the beam if it knows that the deflection's not working. That would be sensible, wouldn't it? Yeah, which way around that went? That little ground wire, that can just touch, can it? Touch amongst itself. Just put one screw back in to hold it securely so it doesn't wander around and touch something. Put those up on their little stands, and then we'll get this hooked up. The iris one come from over there. We're going to have to put this somewhat on, although now we can't because I've already put that together. We'll just go up here like that. It'll be fine for testing. Okay, let's juice it up. Do we need the viewfinder on? Probably not. Guess that would just be a 9 volt input. We could measure it. Yeah, I think the red one's video, then it's power, then it's ground. That's what I reckon. I wonder if that there is a QFP version of that same chip, Hitachi HA11423. Is that what we had before? Let's look. Got those other viewfinders from a while back. It is, look at that, HA11423. And then there's this other one. That might be something else. Oh, that's a BA chip. Okay. Great. And there's that one from that Sony camera we looked at the other day. Yeah, HA11244. Slightly different in that one. The viewfinders are exciting. Little CRTs. Okay, let's turn this on. See what it does. Put that on. See anything shorting out? Probably not. And we'll see if the little irisy thing opens up. Didn't open up. Huh. Look at that. This now responds to light. So if that was there, it would be able to focus. Oh, so the problem is that the iris doesn't work. That's interesting. Power zoom. So yeah, that it goes slow now. So it's got some sort of bias on it. Pretty sure if that was off. Yeah, see that? But when it's on, something's going on there. So the camera might work. Wow, that looks pretty crusty. But work to some degree if the iris on it would open. There you go. Okay, I just realized I wasn't recording and this has happened. Where did we... I'll have to check where I'd got up to. Alright, yeah, it's disappointing because I'd done a lot of things and not recorded it. Anyway, we finished looking at this Mitsubishi camera after noticing that the iris doesn't move, and then I wondered if the Sharp camera had the same problem because we noticed that didn't have a good picture coming out of it. It was just blank. So I tested that again and noticed that it's different. It's got other across the screen. So we decided to take it apart anyway. 2-part video. It's also got a telescopic microphone. So we decided to take the Sharp camera apart. Just pretend that it's still together. First we looked in the viewfinder and noticed that it has the same type of tube, one of those smaller ones, M03JBX8. Whereas that there was in... it's different. It's the same size, it's a different model number, but I presume they'll be pretty compatible. Presumably more or less compatible. 03J30CB4. Very similar viewfinder, but unlike this one, which is all integrated into one with the decoding and everything on it, this one is not. You can see there's 5 wires and 1 shielded with the video, and then the deflection wires there that come off of it. 2 of those go straight onto this connector, so deflection, some of the deflection is handled in the camera, probably because it's synchronized with the tube. So this is mainly just the power supply and drive to the other direction of deflection. I don't know which is which. Anyway, so that's the viewfinder in there, which I think that did light up the same amount as what the video out did. Now it's taking it apart and undoing all this stuff, noticing it is quite a lot harder to get into than the Mitsubishi was, which just folded out nicely with fairly small amount of work. This one is a real piece of work. This side come off, the back come off. Look at all that stuff in there. But you can see the back of the tube, some high voltage wires. I don't know, this hand grip, the wire that goes into the hand grip, that pulled off pretty easily, and it's got some sort of power supply looking thing in it. Perhaps we should open that. It's got some power supply looking thing in it, and oh okay, it's a whole its own thing that plugs in separately. I thought it was going to be soldered down to the board. Anyway, let's open that. Says there on the trimmer, plus 4.9 volts, plus 8.8 or 8.6. It looks like a dual switch mode thing. You can see the inductors there. diodes with a ferrite around one of its legs, which is interesting. Little filtering chokes. I suppose those are the switching transistors. Be pretty low current stuff, but yeah, did that have an insulating sheet? Yeah, in the bottom there, so that goes that way. Does it? I don't know. It goes some way. Little power supply thing. And now we got stuck because there's the side, the handle has a weird tilting thing on it. But I've undone the obvious screws and it's still there. So what do you do now? Well, this could be non-destructive, but doesn't really matter, does it? We're here to explore it, not really to preserve it, because if you want your own one of these, you can just hop on eBay and buy a wide array of these things. They're not fully extinct yet. I just want to document it for future generations. That's the little button. I will be preserving some stuff because I've got a lot of things and a lot of double ups. So some of the stuff that I'm taking apart, I'm still keeping another one to keep preserved. Ah, look. Ah, look, it just pulls off. Okay. And then there's a ball bearing. Still don't think that's going to help us though, is it? Or is it? No, it's still attached by something. Man, that's bizarre. I think there's a screw through from this side. There is a screw there that's kind of deep. That would be disappointing, wouldn't it, if it was that all along? Yep, that was it. Okay. What a mean trick to play. So there's a really long screw through there, holding the other side on. Who'd have thought? And the microphone unplugs. Okay, so the design might not be that bad if you know the trick, or you bother to read a service manual. Don't know if there is one for this. And look at that. That's the viewfinder connector. Seems like there's a lot of test points. Let's undo the side. Now you can see that there are board-to-board connectors of some sort. Also note those screws are different. One of them was a machine thread and one of them was a like plastic self-tapper type thing. So that's great. But see, there's board-to-board connectors there. There's a row of headers there and a couple of places. So that probably doesn't hinge down. It probably has to be unplugged. And there you go. Yeah, so that doesn't allow for very good servicing because you can't have it open while it's, or have it all hooked up while it's folded out like this one, which is quite a neat design. This has become a bit more consumery than the good old days of serviceability. We can get a date code off some of this. Have to find a non-Japanese IC for that. Let's see about this side. Oh, I see. It's because those top screws are just going into this little flimsy metal bracket thing. That's why I had the machine threads. Whereas that bottom it was going into plastic. Plastic that looks like a bit of cast alloy stuff. Nice. Man, it's annoying not pushing record. Gotta record everything. Forget. Maybe this one was supposed to come off first. See how much more flimsy that tripod screw is. Just one little thing with no supports around it. Whereas on this Mitsubishi, there's a whole aluminium plate down there. That's more power supply looking stuff in a shielded box. Look at that, it's screening in there. Look at the interesting headers that it uses that go into these connectors. green connectors, and the thing it plugs in is kind of like a ring terminal. Look at the weird shape of that. Goes into those. Strange. I've not seen terminals like that before. Now let's see if we can get this off. Oh, that's the stabilizer for the tripod thing. It's just a plastic thing. Now this little cover here. Open that up. What is that? Oh, they're the adjustments for the autofocus reflection thingamabob or emitter thing to get the alignment of that sorted out. I think, yeah. The part of the adjustment procedure to get the autofocus working correctly. Okay. I wonder, will we find... See, the board in there looks quite different. That's a double-sided, but very different sort of layout to that. It looks almost like a ceramic type. I don't think it is. It's just a different type of FR4 compared to that, which is the more normal sort of fiberglassy stuff. So that's interesting. I wonder if this will have that same Honeywell chip on it to do the autofocus, although maybe not. See, there's a motor driver there, and there's some sort of hybrid module thing there, which is attached to the board. So that's interesting. Stuff has kind of come out. Oh, okay, there's some sort of... Oh, yes, look, it's this thing. It was a switch, which does lots of stuff. Standby, and it's got manual push auto and auto focus. So the standby switch is combined with the autofocus on-off switch. Strange. And then that's screwed down to the rest of the chassis. Except there's all these little wires soldered on to different bits. Oh yes, you can see there. As the focus is moved, that assembly there, which is behind that lens, goes up and down. So that's compensating the thing, the reflection thing, for the focus, so that it point that the beams merge or the reflection returns stays at the focal point of the lens. Something like that. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it does. It's something about comparing and adjusting until it gets the strongest signal back. So can we go further? Look, there's another part of the focus. So probably one of these is a transmitter and the other one's a receiver in the autofocus system. So let's take this top piece off. We'll open it up so we can see inside it. So it's got some kind of little receiver or transmitter thing there. You see that? It looks a little bit like a laser. It's probably an IR emitter. Probably. And that, which might be ruined now, is, you can see there's a filter on it. Looking filter, which would be an IR filter. So yeah, I think that there would be an IR emitter, and that there's an IR receiver, and it's looking at the reflection of what gets sent coming back to it. And then as the focus adjusts, it adjusts that position of the receiver. So it must be projecting a very narrow spot of IR light, and that's somehow sensitive enough to see the reflection of that spot. Seems a bit far-fetched, doesn't it? So yeah, we were talking about bias lights before, weren't we? This, I reckon's got one. See there, there's two red LEDs in the back of the tube, just to bring it up to just starting to see light, to remove that lag, to bias it almost to the point that it's seeing something, so that when it does see something, it's already mostly charged up. That's the viewfinder connector, same number of wires, goes into there. I was wondering if that sync separating chip was on here. Don't think so. It's all integrated into other stuff that the camera has. Board with a lot of stuff on it, some hybrid modules. Where is the pickup coming off the tube? Everything's all twisted around. Okay, so that's there, coming out of that little box. See, that's those wires there, the deflection, and probably a ground or a screen. And that there will be some power for the preamp, and that's the signal coming off of it. Can that open? Oh yes, so the target connects on there from the tube, and there's a little preamp circuit. Just two adjustments. Does look a little bit corroded. So that's all the video stuff. I guess that stuff there will be the wires going to the iris servo thing. Probably that bunch. Now, will we be able to see that stuff? How do you get into this? It's all very integrated. I don't see any other screws. Oh yeah, I think they're hiding. See, there's a hole there. So I think you have to take that off. And then down there, and then you probably have to take the tube out. And then there'll be one up there. Let's try it. Got much to lose with this thing. Oh, look at that. The tube just comes off. Oh yeah, look at that inductor thing that the signal of the tube goes through. Okay, let's pull these wires off. Dusty. Oh, they went all the way to this other board. I wonder if, is it related to that power regulator thing that was on that board? Don't use tape for securing wires because it leaves them all sticky and horrible 50 years later. Okay. Now, was there another? Oh yeah, there was. It was up there though, so we probably didn't have to take any of that stuff off. Anyway, we've done it now. To the side, although that's quite wide, so yeah, I think we still did have to take it off. Still attached by something. Is there another one down there? Can't even tell. There's something down there. Definitely a screw there. Wow, look how tiny that was, and it's got a washer too. Okay. It's not there now. Yeah, there is another one down there. It's just that one's so full with the wires as well. That's the same sort of deal as that other camera, the Mitsubishi camera. Yes, and it confirms. So those wires there were the ones that go to the little iris, the servo thing. There's a bit of mildew stuff on the lens there. And you see what's going on there. There's another little thing in the center of that. So if it opens a little bit, that's an ND filter. So for outdoor mode, it can go like that. So it's a very small aperture and it's got an extra filter dulling the amount of light that can get through, or reducing the amount of light that gets through. This is the thing that I thought was plastic, but I think it is some type of, maybe it's magnesium alloy some kind of alloy stuff. It's very light. And it's interesting that they were using self-tapper style screws into it. Dodgy, really. Maybe it's too soft and that machine screw threads are too fine and it'll just rip out. So look at this. There are multiple filters. Ah, see that? That's a frost filter. Just a textured pattern. So that when you're doing setting the white balance set, it dulls off the picture so you can set it point it at a general scene and it will just see an average value of the light being returned. So you don't specifically have to point it at a plain white object, though I still would. And then that's the light filter for tungsten or outdoors. Okay, outdoors gets that, so it yellows the cold light of the outdoors. Okay, there's mildew on all the lenses. Nice, both sides. See, iris assembly uses some kind of servo-y synchro thing. Don't know what that is exactly, I should look that up. Guessing it has some waveforms applied to it, and then the phase difference between them causes it to change and hold a different position. That's what I assume would be going on there. Should give it a bit of a poke, shouldn't we? Yeah, well, that one didn't work. Maybe we should put this back together and see if we can get this to respond, and then see if we can measure something on it. I'll think about that as a little bonus at the end. Otherwise, I think we're done on this camera, perhaps. So those two wires there, got real thin wires. Whoa, look at that! There's a TO220 that I've cut the top off of. Wow, 7808 8-volt linear regulator. If that's the lid cut off, well, it's tab cut off. Quite interesting. Seems quite desperate for space. There's also an axial electrolytic there, which is something you don't see every day now. Interesting, very white board. It's probably because it's dealing with the very sensitive signal that gets picked up by that autofocus sensor. Very, low value signal. Use that same really thin wire going to the focus motor. There's also end switches. You see that? When the focus gets to one end, it pushes that switch, and when it gets to the other end, it pushes that one. I wonder if there's any other, if it can just estimate the position between those two end switches. I guess it does. Does it need to? Probably just needs it so that it knows when to stop and stop trying because you've hit the end. I'll just switch there so you know when you're doing the manual white balance, so it knows to set it based on what it can see at that point. And there's just power for that's the zoom motor, those two wires, and then those three, probably power and a control signal. Was there anything else going to that? I don't think so. What was going through to that handle? Was it that? Oh yeah, because the zoom control is on there. This is probably a little motor drive IC or an H-bridge thing somewhere. Maybe it's that. So that's just directly connected on. And the other bit, it's probably this power supply here is probably making a very clean, smooth, separate power supply which gets sent down these wires to the autofocus circuit, so it's not interfered by any of the other parts. Maybe? I don't know exactly where it goes. Hard to follow. Double-sided board. That goes through to somewhere, and a resistor. Might just be in a normal power supply and not related to this thing, because it seems to just go over to that fuse, which then comes from the camera cable. Although there's another track coming off. Yeah, so I think it is using that power supply for at least one power rail. Great! 2 video cameras studied in medium detail. I'll get back to you if I do an experiment on this iris thing. I had a go at putting this Sharp video camera back together so that we could observe the iris opening and shutting, but I wasn't able to get it to open and shut consistently. It's doing nothing now. To start with, it was opening a little bit, and I thought that the manual iris control knob was affecting it, but nah. It gives a little quiver sometimes. So I don't know what made it. It didn't seem to be responding to light at all. See, being in the dark like that, you'd think that it would open. Anyway, what you can see is a little bit of a glow, not from there, from that thing for the autofocus. A little purpley glow there. So that is, a IR. Was I saying UV before? I don't know. IR emitter, and at the bottom was the receiver for the autofocus. It's interesting, there's some LEDs on that board, which are lit up. There's 3 of them there. And we can also see that there are LEDs, the 2 LEDs, the bias light around the tube, those light up. But yeah, we didn't get to see what's going on with the iris control motor thing, but looked at this, couldn't find any service manual schematic for this Sharp camera, but the camera we dismantled in a previous video, that HVC3000, looking in the service manual for that, we can see there is the iris motor. It's got 2 coils. One's ground reference, and that comes off of a what do you call it, like an amplifier totem pole output driver thing, which comes from this device, an auto iris chip. So the voltage on there will be getting amplified and driving that coil, and then the other coil is connected between the inputs of this differential amplifier. So it looks like it's just a DC thing that will be biased, and that's biased, and then there must be a magnet in it that sits in a position based on the magnetic fields that it is exposed to. So that's good. The last bit that we should look at today is the zoom lens. It says that it is a TV zoom lens, so it means it should be a proper zoom, meaning that as you zoom in and out, the focus of the subject should remain in focus, and it's achieved by the way the elements move. You see, when you zoom in and out, the middle group there goes from the front all the way to the back, but then the back part, there should be one that moves in then out again to maintain that focus. And we might be able to have a look at that. You can, it is in there, but it's quite hard to see through that back element. Oh, there you go. See, it's all the way towards the back. At one extreme of the zoom, it moves forward and then comes back again to maintain that focus. Cheaper zooms and the types of zooms that you'd have on your still camera won't do that. As you zoom in or out on that, the focus will change, unless they're electronically compensating for that. Take this apart without destroying it. There we go. Now I've got nothing to hold on to. There you go, you can see the back element, well, one of the back elements going deeper and then coming out again. Yeah, there's a thing there for setting up the location, but yeah, I think we just wrecked that. Well, there's nothing to lock into it. Alright, so that was a Sharp QC something, was it 88 or 78? A Sharp, well, it says it on this bit. A Sharp QC-78C video camera and a Mitsubishi, whatever that says on it, CC-50 video camera. Teardown investigation, a little bit of an investigation. Great, and then we've got heaps more other cameras and VCRs to get through. And we've got some exciting things like this too coming up.